watching this episode, it's just moment after moment of things that I think could have been fleshed out and could have made the show better as an individual entity, as the book of Boba Fett, not as a chapter in the larger story of the Mandalorian or the Star Wars galaxy, but as a tale about this specific character. And like I go through the dialogue between Boba Fett and Cad Bane, and they imply so much. Like I basically, in my notes here for what I've titled as Boba Fett versus Cad Bane round 2, I just wrote down the scene. I just copied down what they said because it's great. Bane says, "I've known you a long time, Boba. One thing I can't figure, what's your angle?" And Boba says, "This is my city. These are my people. I will not abandon them. Like the Tuskens, don't toy with me. I'm not a little boy any longer." Like, there's so much in here. And then Bane, after he shoots him the first time, you gave it a shot. You tried to go straight, but you've got your father's blood pumping through your veins. You're a killer. Like, there's so much in there. There's so much in there. And a lot of it feels like it's coming out of nowhere, or it was alluded to a little bit in the first couple of episodes. But one, those were so long ago that you'll be forgiven if you forgot some of it. Like, I kept, anytime the Major Domo showed up on screen, I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're still around,
right?
You're a guy, sure." And so it was so long ago that some of that stuff feels sort of out of sight, out of mind. And I feel like if you had taken the time over 2 more episodes, or even 1 more episode, frankly, to let us in a little bit on the Cad Bane Boba Fett relationship. Let us in a little bit more on who these two are to each other. Make the rivalry even clearer. Don't lay out their rivalry mostly in the scene where one of them dies. Like, let us know what the rivalry is an episode before one of them dies, so that we can sort of feel it when the battle goes down. And look, as Clone Wars fans, we can sort of pick up on some of the things that are being said in this scene. We know that Boba and Cad Bane had a relationship, that Cad Bane was kind of training Boba. We saw it a little bit in the Obi-Wan undercover arc where he goes into prison and Boba's there and Cad's there. So like, we see it a little bit there, and we know that there was going to be an arc that actually laid out Bane trading Boba, and would have actually involved Tatooine and Tusken Raiders, and I wonder how much of that arc got pulled into this story. So we, as fans, we know some of this stuff, but we shouldn't have to rely on our knowledge of unproduced Clone Wars episodes for a scene to carry its emotional kick. Because when Bane says, "Consider this my final lesson. Look out for yourself. Anything else is weakness." When the hell has Bane taught Boba a lesson on screen? We know it because we've watched the panels of Dave Filoni talking about it at Celebration. Maybe you were in the room, maybe you watched it on YouTube. Like, you might know that,
But that's a strong assumption, right? Like, you have all these things that happen in this episode, or even in the season in general, where it's like, oh, you need to read this obscure thing just to know like what's going on. And it's like, but that's just a big assumption that creators make when they do those sorts of things. And it's always, the payoff is always a little iffy, as obviously, as we're discussing right now.
Yeah. And even knowing that stuff, I still feel like it didn't carry the weight that it should have, the weight that it would have, that it does for the it doesn't carry the weight for the audience that it does for the characters, because the characters live that. So when Bane says that to Boba, that means something to Boba, but we don't know their relationship enough. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen those moments play out.
This is kind of like, there's a lot of things that Dave Filoni has been doing right with this Mandoverse stuff, and Favreau and Rodriguez as well. All 3 of them. There are a lot of things that they've done right that I feel has made these shows better than some of the Disney era Star Wars TV. Look at some of the animated moments that we've had. I felt like they've improved a lot from that time. At the same time, though, I feel like neither of them are fully cut out for this level of interconnectedness and this level of show. I think they're still trying to figure out how to do it. Because when I am watching the Marvel shows, that's the most direct comparison that I can make between something that's trying to do a similar thing but isn't these shows. I feel like the writers and the showrunners of the Marvel shows have a grasp on how to have the audience and the characters go on a journey together to where you're feeling similar things when things happen. And so that, for example, Hawkeye and also Falcon and the Winter Soldier both did really good jobs taking you on a journey with both sides, the heroes and the villains, doing flashbacks so that you can understand their motivations and where they're coming from. So when you have the big showdowns at the end of those shows, you know, you're really emotionally involved in it because you're not just rooting for Hawkeye and for Bucky, but you also have a lot of emotional attachment and investment in who they're fighting against. I feel like Book of Boba Fett did a good job giving us flashbacks with the protagonist of the show, Boba Fett, so that we understood where he's coming from. And that's why, you know, we keep saying things like Cad Bane has to be dead, or otherwise it doesn't fit with Boba's arc, because we saw that. We understand it from his perspective. But they didn't do that. Instead of giving us more time to deal with Cad Bane emotionally and deal with the Pikes and the villains of the show emotionally and even plot-wise to understand their motivations, they chose to instead spend that time to go off on a side adventure with Din and Grogu and explain more about what's going on over there. And as a result of that, when you get to this episode, you feel really imbalanced and you feel conflicted, because while we've gotten great character development and exposition with Boba Fett and Din, and so the moments with them make sense and you understand why they're making the decisions that they are, equally it takes away from your feelings about the Pikes and your feelings about Cad Bane, and it makes their characters and what we see with them weaker and less impactful. And so I think that was something that the whole group of people working on these shows needs to come out of this experience of learning, and so that when they're writing future shows, they don't have that imbalance, because I think it really creates a mixed bag of a viewing experience emotionally.